Iran's Sarina Esmaeilzadeh, 16, last song before death is breaking hearts.
Take me to church, like a dog at the shot of your light.
Omid, Memarian journalist and analyst from the USA wrote, "Listen to Sarina Esmaeilzadeh, 16-year-old, full of life and hope. She was killed on September 23 in Karaj as a result of baton blows, like many other young protesters who lost their lives for speaking their minds. These voices will not be silenced."
Take me to church, like a dog at the shot of your light. I'm taking my sins and you can shout in your night. Offer me that necklace, that's like the God, let me give you my life. Take me to church, like a dog at the shot of your light. I'm taking my sins and you can shout in your night. Offer me that necklace, that's like the God, let me give you my life.
There was rage and grief outpouring for the death of Sarina because the video of her singing so gustily did grip hearts. Comments poured out such as a young vibrant life cut short by a repressive regime. Someone else cried, "Only 16, so beautiful, full of life. She could have been my daughter who was going to bring justice for these kids?" We are not sure if this is true, but someone else commented, "Sadly, and today his mother committed suicide." Someone else commented, "This video drives tears in your eyes, why did you have to murder this innocent girl?" Beaten to death by security forces in Iran, her death is shaking people perhaps for the simple things she did and wrote in her very lively, energetic way. 3 days before she died, she wrote on social media, "Is it possible?" The next day she wrote, "My country feels strange." She took part in a nationwide protest after 22-year-old Mahsa Amini at the hands of Iran's morality police. She died of her wounds on September 16. Sarina Esmaeilzadeh was beaten to death on September 23, 2022, in Karaj. Sarina was an exceptionally brave girl, as many out there, and over 185 people have been killed by authorities in the protests sweeping across Iran. How did the protests start? Mahmoud Amiri Moghadam, director of the non-profit human rights organization Iran Human Rights Can Wait to Andrew Castle, at least 185 people have been killed by authorities in the protests sweeping across Iran. Mr. Amiri Moghadam's findings come from research undertaken by Iran Human Rights. The protests began on September 16, when furious crowds gathered to demand justice for the murder of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini at the hands of Iran's morality police. The nationwide protests have since grown into a demand for fundamental human rights, women's freedoms, and an end to the corrupt theocratic regime that has kept hold of Iran for 43 years. At least 185 people have been killed by the authorities in the series of protests, said Mr. Amiri Moghadam. And they are still coming out onto the streets. While the regime's authorities have applied brutality to stop peaceful protests, restricted internet access, and spread disinformation, the protest movement has prevailed. This has not been without further tragedy, as two 16-year-olds Sarina Esmaeilzadeh and Nika Shakarami, who joined the protests against the government, were killed by authorities. Due to dread and pressure from the government to support its claims, members of Nika's family were muffled from revealing the truth about her death. Mr. Amiri Moghadam went on to paint a picture of the general mood in Iran, and outlined the universal appeal of the protest movement. "Ordinary people have enormous power in democratic countries," said Mr. Amiri Moghadam. Mr. Amiri Moghadam noted that this is achievable, having been implemented in the context of Syria, but warned that it requires pressure from the public.